Well, this is called Budget Hotline. It's a special show that we're bringing to you right up till the run-up to the budget. Over the next 2 weeks, every day, we'll be answering your questions in personal finance, tax and real estate live on air between 6:30 and up to 7:30 p.m. We're starting at 7 o'clock today because of breaking news. But I have Dhirendra Kumar, the CEO of Value Research, who will join us in a little while, and Karthik Zaveri, Director of Transcend Consulting, who joins us right now. Dhirendra is on. Dhirendra, thank you for joining us. Karthik, it's a pleasure to have you as well. Of course, this is a big budget that we're looking forward to. We've already seen so many announcements from the government that actually the expectation from the budget is quite high. Dhirendra, from what you're expecting in the budget, we've heard people analyzing the market saying that the government is really going to have to pull a rabbit out of its hat this time during the budget. From a personal finance point of view, can we at least expect better tax slabs, maybe an easing of our tax system?
Yes, very much so. You know, in the earlier budget, the finance minister has clearly said that corporate tax rates will come down, and post demonetization, I think for sake of just giving a consolation to all the troubled businesses, that looks imminent. So even to bring in parity with that, I think it will be reasonable to expect lowering of tax rates. But let me tell you, this is going to be one of the most uncertain budgets because, for budgets.
Well, it is going to be an uncertain budget. We're going to try and get Dhirendra back there. In the meantime, Karthik is also with us. Karthik, we have a couple of questions I'd like to start answering. Sriram Shastri is on the phone line from Khammam district in Telangana. And for our viewers who are watching, there'll be a phone number at the bottom of your screen, and you can pick up the phone and call right now, and we'll answer your questions live. Anything you want to ask us about either your money or about your taxes or about making investments in general, that's what we're here for. Sriram's on the phone line. Sriram, go ahead. What's your question? Sriram, mute your television in the background and tell us your question.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, Sriram, we can hear you. Tell us your question. Okay. What is your question?
Hello. Good evening, sir.
Yes, good evening.
Hello.
Okay, we're going to try and get back to Sriram in a little while. Karthik Zaveri, Dhirendra was just telling us, of course, that it's a big expectation, this budget, in terms of what we can expect from our, from our tax slabs. What are your expectations from the finance minister?
Frankly, I do not think that the tax slabs will change dramatically, because think about it this way: the direct tax collection, which all individuals and corporates pay, is close to about 9 lakh crores. So firstly, the government will have to see by measures of GST if they are going to compensate, more than compensate in terms of additional tax collection. Maybe we'll see some sort of a discounting on that. But I don't expect too much of a tinkering with that. But whatever comes in, I personally think it should come in the form of deductions. Deductions which we've been talking for a long time. For example, the Section 80C, which has got a hoi polloi of a whole variety of instruments. And we've been saying this year after year that if that is segregated, because we don't have social security, so a separate allocation for health insurance, a separate allocation, for example, for long-term retirement benefits, a separate allocation for insurance, and a separate allocation to trigger long-term investments. Now, if this ATC gets distributed into these 4 beautiful sections and gets expanded, that would be a great move from the government side. And this would be a more historic sort of an opportunity to replan the entire deductions that we enjoy as part of our ATC. So I think if the tax deductions come, and if they come in this form, it would be extremely beneficial both for the government and for all of us together.
It's true. In fact, we have been looking forward to a simplification of our tax system. The whole point of GST is, for example, moving towards that simplified tax system. Vidyadhar is on the phone line as well. He's calling from Alibag. Vidyadhar, what's your question?
My question is that I want your advice regarding investing in Nifty ETF. I want to invest over a span of 10 years. Are the returns comparable with those of large cap mutual funds?
All right, the Nifty ETF, will it be comparable to large cap mutual funds? Karthik, do you want to take that question? It's an interesting question. Instead of having, to take on the pain of choosing specific, funds, just pick up the Nifty ETF. What will be that return in comparison to large cap, funds right now?
The answer could be either ways with the other. What happens with an ETF is it is exactly mapping the index. You might see a situation where we are, for example, somewhere around 9,000 in the Nifty, and 5 years later, we have gone to about 13, 14, 15,000 once and come back to about 8, 9,000. Now, what is happening in a Nifty ETF is nobody is doing any profit booking, nobody is doing any movement significantly generate that additional return for you. It's exactly mapping the index. So my suggestion is if you actually went with large cap funds, worst case scenario, you'll get the same return, and a best case scenario, you'll get a return which is far above, or which is what in technical terms we call as the alpha. So in my view, I think a large cap fund or a mixture of a large cap and a mid cap, which is known as a multi-cap fund, these kind of instruments should give you a much better return, given that you're planning to hold for a 10-year period. So your probability of making a 16 to 18% compounded rate of growth on your investment in 10 years would be very interesting.
Dhirendra,
Yes.
if you compare, and this is the question that Vidyadhar is asking, if we compare a Nifty ETF to a large cap mutual fund, which one would you recommend at this point?
Depends, if one is looking at Nifty only and only the large cap universe, you will not be very worse off even with Nifty, because my sense is that there are very few large cap funds which are able to beat the Nifty. In fact, if you look at 2016, the Nifty, all the index funds were beating, but you are not thinking of investing just for 1 year. On a 10-year basis, I think there is still a very reasonable case. But I would say that when you are investing for 10 years, think of multi-cap, as Karthik was saying, because the India story will unfold not with the large caps, but a lot of mid-sized companies, small-sized companies turning big, and this is where that is why we see that many of those funds on a 10-year, 15-year, 20-year period are able to beat the index by a wide margin, and that wide margin doesn't come from the large caps.
Right, so multi-cap funds are a mixture of large, small and mid-cap funds. We have a list, of course, of multi-cap funds that we've recommended for this year that can be sent to you. Vimal is also on the phone line from Hyderabad. Vimal, what's your question?
Madam, I want to invest in mutual fund, but I am new to it. So I should invest in 5 to 10 mutual funds.
Are you looking to put aside, Vimal?
Yeah, madam.
How much money will you be investing on a monthly basis?
Monthly 15 to 20,000.
15 to 20,000. And this is the first time you're investing in mutual funds?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you don't need 5 or 6. Dhirendra, he doesn't need to buy 5 or 6 mutual funds if he's the first, if this is his first time. Will 1 or 2 balanced funds do the trick?
In fact, 15 to 20.
Yes.
Yes, I think he should just it will entirely depend on if he's going to pay taxes, then first he should try and fill all the entitlement, or all the maximum advantage he can derive from ATC. So if saving tax will be an added advantage, so he should first fill that quota, and then he should consider one balanced fund, so one tax saving fund to fill that. And if tax saving is not on his horizon, if that is not a goal at all, it is entirely taken care of by his provident fund contribution, then maybe 1 or 2 balanced funds, and definitely he should be not making a lump sum investment, only doing an SIP.
All right. Karthik, obviously this is a good time to do an SIP. What advice would you give someone who's investing in mutual funds for the absolute first time?
For the absolute first timer, my suggestion to such persons is that, try and go to 2 or maximum 4 different companies or fund houses, as we call them. What happens is you're diversifying your risk in terms of the management risk of your mutual fund. So therefore, if you chose 1 or 2, depending on the quantum of money you're investing, if you chose 1 or 2 diversified or a multi-cap kind of a fund and 1 or 2 mid-cap kind of funds, because I always believe that mid-caps are the smaller companies which are growing faster, and this will give a fillip to the portfolio, and this is where you will also in years to come see the benefit of real wealth creation. So your large cap and multi-cap kind of funds will give you returns in consumer rate in line with the index 14, 15, 17%. But these have the chances and the potential to go even further. And then when you get a little used to it, when you get experienced, then diversify your investment further into certain sector specifics also, but restricting your overall sort of exposure to the various sectors to about 20%. So even if in a long term you did 40%, 40% and 20%, that should be a great strategy. 40 to large caps, 40 to mid caps and 20% to sectoral funds.
Well, I'm sure Dhirendra would disagree. I know that Dhirendra disagrees on the point on sectoral funds, but let's also take another question. Rajesh Gupta has written in from Himachal Pradesh. He says he's a government employee and he has the facility of the General Pension Fund. He says, should he be using the NPS along with the GPF to get the additional benefit of the new rebates offered by the government? Well, they're not new anymore. They were offered about a year ago. Dhirendra Kumar, for those of us, and I know that one of the stands is that if you have the employee provident fund, that there is no need to take the public provident fund. But would you recommend the NPS?
In a way, it is a little better, but you know, the NPS, the way it comes with kind of the kind of constraints, like I'm expecting that this budget actually brings in parity with the kind of tax concession available with EPF. That's one. But I would say that if somebody is going to invest for the long run, if you are going to, because the additional 80C tax break which comes exclusively for NPS, we did this calculation last year that if somebody was investing 50,000 rupees in an equity fund, and as compared to 50,000 rupees in 35,000 rupees in equity fund as compared to 50,000 rupees in NPS, you have three disadvantages. One is that the maximum allocation to equity that can happen in NPS is only 50%. Your money, a substantial part of your accumulation on retirement has to be necessarily converted into annuity. And third is that the income that you will derive from NPS post retirement at 60 will be taxable. So given these three constraints, I think if you are investing just 35,000 rupees, which means you forego the tax break, the 80C special break that you get on investment in NPS, that will accumulate into a much larger sum because it will be fully invested in equity. It will not be, and you will not be constrained by any of the things that NPS has. So because an equity fund, all your returns will be tax free after 3 years, or maybe a normal equity fund held for over 1 year will be entirely tax free. So you have greater flexibility, superior return if you are just disciplined about it.
Greater flexibility and superior return, which you will not get from the NPS. Nishant is on the phone line from Hyderabad. Nishant, what's your question?
Yeah, basically my question is linked with the portfolio which I am planning to invest in future. And currently my portfolio is purely on debt. Currently I have an EPS of more than 10 lakhs as well as PPF of 10.5 lakhs. And currently also I'm holding a liquid assets of 16 lakhs. So I just wanted to take an advice where exactly I can go ahead with the investment. I am 33 years old right now.
So you're very young, and there's no need for you to be so heavily invested right now, Nishant, in debt, especially given the fact that we're going to see a lowering interest rate regime. And if the interest rates come down, then all of your debt deposits and your various PF, PPF, the rate is going to come down on all of that. So it's time for you to consider looking outside of debt. Karthik, I'll come to you with this one. Obviously, it's time for Nishant to be looking outside of debt.
Absolutely, Nishant. Let me give you a rule of thumb. See, typically, whenever you're considering investments in debts, and like Faiz said, that as time goes by, the interest rates are only going to come down. So you have a rule of thumb that every 10 years, your wealth will double. So for every 100 rupees you've invested in any of these debt or fixed income kind of investment, every 10 years, your money will double. Vis-a-vis that, even if we sort of considered the absolute basic large cap diversified category of funds, that would multiply 4 times. Now you do the mathematics, and then 10 years twice versus 10 years 4 times. So every 5 years your money in equity mutual funds is doubling. versus it's becoming 1.5 times into a fixed investment. So now vis-a-vis that, how much wealth will you create? So now you may feel very comfortable and very safe about doing this, but by the time you reach your 50s and 55 and you start looking back and see the amount of money that you've accumulated and the expenditure that you will need to do post-retirement and in all those senior citizen years of your life, then you'll realize that you better have some allocation of equity. So I think it would be a great risk at the moment to not put anything into real estate and in the stock market, because these are places which will create a substantially larger composition of wealth for you and which you will need in years to come. So go easy, go safe, but even if you don't want to do equity mutual funds, consider balance funds which have much lesser volatility and at the same time have the potential to give you very good rate of returns. So I think your strategy of 100% debt is not good. Now that you have 15 lakhs liquid, please do consider making a portfolio out of mutual funds, maybe equities, large caps 40%, 50%, mid caps, and about 10 to 20% in sectors, because these sectors have the potential to really multiply your returns in certain time cycles, and other cycles, like sectors like pharmaceutical and all, they don't really go through a huge recession, and therefore pharmaceutical, banking, these are places where you want to have a little bit concentration of your money, but just a little bit, not too much.
Dhirendra, I'm going to come to you with the same question, and this is a question a lot of people are going to ask, and I'm going to generalize this question to any senior citizen who's watching right now, who are going to feel that, listen, all of my money is either in fixed deposits or in post office savings schemes or in some sort of debt investment or the other, and the rates are coming down on all of them. So Karthik recommends perhaps a balanced fund. Would you also agree on a balanced fund, and how should we be picking these balanced funds right now?
The one is that balanced fund could be a good vehicle for accumulation, but if you are in retirement, it's very difficult to manage yourself. Even the volatility of balanced fund might be unnerving for people, and it is definitely not an income vehicle. It is not a vehicle from which you can derive predictable income. So it should be used as a vehicle. Most people in retirement have historically thought that they can't assume risk, they can't withstand the volatility, so they have to be in fixed income. That could be a very injurious thing in coming times, because your income needs will not be fulfilled, and even if it is fulfilled today and you consume all the income, your capital will not be protected to take care of your income requirement 5 years from now, 10 years from now with inflation, whatever moderate inflation we are likely to see. So you have to really, this is the only time perhaps when there should be an urgency to plan your finances in a manner that a part of the money which is not required for generating income today should be finding its way into conservative, steady vehicle, growth vehicles like balance fund, which should be able to replenish or supplement your capital over time. Because you really can't take chances with your retirement accumulation at this stage, but you can only calibrate it, and this requires some fine planning. And most investors who think that they have to invest all their money in fixed income and derive all the derive fixed income out of it might be in for nasty surprise in coming years.
We should reiterate that, of course, if the rate of fixed deposits or if the loan rates are coming down, that also means fixed deposits, corporate deposits, PPF, PF, EPF, post office savings schemes, the rates on all of these things are going to come down over the next year or so. So what are you going to do if these are you only have investments in this sort of debt securities? You're going to have to look outside of those debt securities. Shailesh is on the phone line from Bangalore. Shailesh, tell us, what's your question?
Yes. So my question was if at all the long-term capital gains tenure is increased from 1 year to 3 years, in case somebody is invested for say 4 years, but after 2 years somebody switches into another equity fund. So both are equity funds, but just due to performance somebody switches to another equity fund from the same fund house. So does the 3-year applicability apply, or how will it be considered from taxation perspective?
Well, it's a very hypothetical question we're asking. Dhirendra, there was a lot of fear about the fact that the long-term capital gains applicable on equity, which means our equity mutual funds also, which we don't have to pay. We don't have to pay long-term capital gains if we've held a fund for more than 1 year. If that becomes 3 years, and that's speculative right now because we don't know what the government is going to do, what implication will that have on the money we've already invested, the SIPs that we're already running?
Yeah, so we have a very clear precedence on that. This is exactly what happened with fixed income funds, where the tenure was increased from 1 year to 3 years, and it was actually a retrospective order, in a sense that so all your money has to be held for 3 years for it to qualify. Otherwise, all the gains that you will derive will become taxable in that particular year in which you derive it.
Right. So if that's the case, then you will have no choice but to hold it until it becomes tax free. Dhirendra, but that would also include switches, like our viewer had just asked us. If, for example, Shailesh says he's moving from one equity fund to another equity fund because of performance, he'd still have to pay tax on that, wouldn't he?
Yes, absolutely. Switches are not recognized by tax laws in any different fashion. All your switches, systematic withdrawal plan, systematic transfer plan, anything will be treated as a purchase or sale of a new fund. So even if you are switching from a debt fund to an equity fund, it is considered as a redemption of the debt fund and purchase of the new equity fund, or switch from one equity fund to another of the same fund family is considered in your account statement you get an entry that this money was redeemed, you realize this much, and you are making a new investment in this new fund. So you still have time. If you are a little fearful and you think that your 3-year wait might become constrained, then nothing stops you to actually just roll over your churn your investment right now, sell your investment, and buy those investments once again, so that you are able to realize all the gains, and that will not be taxable.
This is an interesting thing, Dhirendra is saying. Perhaps before the budget, it makes sense to roll all your investments over once, sell everything and buy it back the next day. I have time for one more question, although I'm tempted to have a conversation about that idea of rolling over investments. Prakash is on the phone line from Bangalore. Prakash, go ahead. What's your question?
See, I have been investing in equity for more than 20 years. Now, after a long-term capital gain was exempted if you held the stocks for more than a year. There is a proposal to tax the same in the coming budget.
Yes.
What is the long-term benefit is lost if they tax it? So what is the advantage now? I have got two options. Number one, sell the equities today, and again after 3-4 days, because I've been holding it for more than 20 years. So sell it and again claim a long-term capital gain tax, and again after a week buy again.
Yes.
Is this the best option?
Is this the best option? And I'm going to ask both Karthik and Dhirendra this question. Dhirendra, this comes back to what you were saying just now. And Karthik, I'll come to you immediately after this. Dhirendra, so here's the question. If he's been holding for 20 years, is it likely that, the definition of long term will be more than 20 years? It's very likely that his investment will still be tax exempt.
Very unlikely, but right now we are only speculating that, assuming that equity becomes taxable at some point, then it might be worthwhile that, you are able to convert all your gains, you are able to realize it, because as of now in this country, the tax laws are such that you can, if you realize all the gains on equities held for 20 years, all the gains are tax free. Why not do it? Why take a chance? And even if that amounts to a little bit of hard work, one should do it, because one is generally wary of very unpredictable government moves.
Unpredictable government mood, and that's something that's obviously getting a lot of investors very concerned. Karthik, do you also think that this is a possibility? Our unpredictable government might suddenly tax all of our lifetime investment in equity?
I don't really think so, because if they did that, then, a lot of people would not invest in equities. A lot of foreign institutions won't come in. A lot of people will lose interest in equities. But having said that, the first and the most important thing about any investment is the merit of that investment and not taxation. So even if you are going to be taxed a little bit, but if your investment has the potential to generate the best return possible, then I would still go ahead and invest into that. Now, whatever happens in terms of the budget, or whatever happens in terms of an announcement of a rule, most likely it will not be with immediate effect. You see, the whole budget has to get passed through the finance bill. So there are only very few measures which are made effective immediately. So if something like that happens, then, wait and watch. I would not really like to advise and jump the gun and right now restructure the portfolio. But well, let's say if such a law did come in, then all your investments that you've held for, let's say, less than 2 years or 3 years, depending on whatever comes in, of course there is a case to roll that over, because you don't want to unnecessarily pay tax when you have the possibility of booking those tax-free gains. So I would really wait and watch. I would see how the government really decides and how they move, what gets announced and what gets passed eventually. So I would be a little more reactive and not proactive at this stage.
All right, so the interesting thing that we're looking at right now is the possibility of tax on long-term gains of equity. Dhirendra is saying one of the ways to sort of bring down your risk as far as possible is to sell all of the equity you have, including the mutual funds, and just buy back that entire amount the next day. That way you just convert all of your gains into tax-free gains. Yeah, Dhirendra has
in terms of recent precedents.
Yes, go ahead, Dhirendra.
Yeah, I really don't. Faye, there are two possibilities, if at all. One, there are broadly three possibilities. One thing is that nothing happens. There is a status quo, and Finance Minister has indicated that he doesn't have, taxing long-term capital gains on equity is not on his mind. That's one aspect. The other is that, the period gets increased to 3 years. The third is that, the equity becomes taxable with indexation. In any of these situations, I am not saying that there is not a case for equity. There is a very compelling case for equity irrespective of the status of tax. All I am saying is that if there is a small chance that equity will become taxable, if not today, somewhere later, and a caller like him who has invested for 20 years sitting on a sizable gain, he should realize it, because 2 years back this government itself made a change in the tax laws for debt funds, and that was exactly in this fashion, that if you were an old investor who was holding his debt fund for over 1 year, he had to hold it for another 2 years for it to be treated as long-term capital gains with indexation. Otherwise, so effectively that amounts to that law being implemented on a retrospective effect. And the government did not change its mind after announcing that.
So there is a risk, of course, and the best way to mitigate that risk, Dhirendra is saying, is to not restructure your portfolio, but to simply sell all of your stocks in mutual funds and buy them back the next day, thereby converting all of the gains that you've accumulated so far to tax-free gains. We're going to have to stop here because we've run out of time. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. But tomorrow at 6:30 p.m, we come back and we answer more questions from our experts. Our phone lines will continue to be open. In the meantime, feel free to get in touch. Thanks for watching.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.